Yeah,
Yeah.
Colby
That line.
sleep under stone, never more to wake on stony bed, never till the sun fails and the moon is dead. In the black when the stars shall die, and still on gold here let them lie, till the dark Lord lifts his hand over dead sea and withered land.
Guys, how's your fitness?
Could be better.
All right. Is
I'll be
there
honest.
anything you haven't been doing lately?
I've been cutting my calorie intake just to make up for the lack of exercise I've been doing.
All right.
Trying to walk my dog longer, that's a good little easy piece of fitness. And my knee's been bothering me, so I've been doing some pistol squats to strengthen those knees up.
Yeah.
Dang.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I can't even do a pistol squat.
Oh, I'm not doing them well.
I
A
could do
shaky
it.
foundation, you know?
I could do it assisted.
Oh yeah, I'm grabbing walls. I'm falling over like a grandma.
Oh, yeah, that's a good stuff.
Yeah, then I could do that too.
That's like anytime I send Carlos a workout where I did handstand push-ups, he's like, "Yep, nope."
Nope, no thanks.
Yeah, I was like, you lost me at those.
So you got to do a 100-meter handstand walk. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not.
Someday.
Maybe. Maybe. Well, I guess you gotta ask about mine. I'm actually trying to lose weight for a wedding in January, so I've been trying to be more conscientious about what I eat, as well as started lifting weights and working out again. But
Nice.
Nice. What do
that's
you
not really here. I usually follow like 5x5, the strong lifts,
Okay.
just to get like back into the groove of stuff because I stopped working out for a while, and then I'll probably go to like something. I'll look up something that'll probably just kind of focus on more full body workouts. Just stick around with the strong lifts, and then I'll try to like get a little more finite. So probably more hit type workouts and that type of thing.
And
Nice.
what Pete actually means by that is that he is going to wait for you and I, Carlos, to put out our challenge for everybody, and then he's going to start doing that.
There you go.
We got to work on
100%
that.
down.
I know we gotta get that thing done. It was a lot of fun doing the walking challenge with everybody. So doing it, kind of mixing it up and doing it like something a little bit different. But still having like all of the modifications. Like one of our big things with that movement with the walking challenge was letting everybody know that like any movement counted. Any movement matters.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't have to be exactly like this thing or this much or whatever. It's just like, and that's probably how we'll base our next challenge as
Word.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, Carlos, how you been doing, man?
Well, it's interesting. Pete said he's doing. It sounds like he's doing a Wendler, right?
Yeah, it does.
And you know my love for
starting Wendler cycles,
starting Wendler cycles, and then not finishing them. So yeah, I started another Wendler cycle this week. So week 1 is done. I just finished my shoulder press. So
nice.
Is this number 4 since I've moved?
It's number 3.
Okay.
I finished it the first time, right? So I went through and I did it the first time, and then I got bored with it, and then I got really bad with like, my consistency, and so lately my consistency's been better, and I just want the strength portion of it.
Yeah.
I'm limited to what I can do as far as deadlifts though. And so I just figure I'm just going to max out like my reps when I get there on my deadlift. Cause I
Are
only
you trying to
have
max out or just like trying to stick with the regiment, going up a certain percentage?
I'm still going up a certain percentage, and I'll probably be able to do that for the deadlift up until like the last cycle.
Nice.
And then when I'm supposed to like max out my deadlift, I probably won't be able to because like the last time I did it, I ran out of weight. So I kind of just had to stop, and I could have probably done a little bit more. And so I think just what I'm going to do is when I get there, just instead of my 1 rep max, I'll probably do like a 2 or 3 or see what my max reps are
Word.
at that higher weight.
Or
Nice.
you could check out, by the way, True Fitness, if anybody is listening, you can sponsor us if you want. You can check out the fact that True Fitness has their, I think, 45-pound plates on sale for like $1 a pound.
True Fitness should just send me some, and then I will plug them every time we do
all
one of
the
these.
time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Every time. I could definitely use some 45-pound plates.
Yeah. I mean, you
Some
throw
more
one more set of 45s and you've got
I'm done.
you got a whole new world when
I
it
got a
comes
whole-
to
yeah.
deadlifts.
Yeah.
Do
I
most
won't-
of you, do both of you have like workout like equipment at home or something of the sorts?
Mhm.
Yeah, I bought it's a Rogue, it's one of the foldable racks. And so it folds in on itself. I should have got the bigger one, and I kind of kicking myself after the fact, right?
Yeah.
But for our small garage, it's fine. So
Perfect.
perfect for like, pull-ups, and Chris did some muscle ups in there.
Yep.
Before
I
he
almost
moved.
hit my head.
He almost hit his head on the roof of my garage. Yeah, there's definitely I'm limited in what I can do in the garage, just because can't do wall balls really. Not to CrossFit standards. Also don't have a 20-pound wall ball. Also don't want to use a 20-pound wall ball.
Also, those are expensive.
I did buy a 53-pound kettlebell
Nice.
recently, so I
Damn.
got that on Amazon, and that was still like $80, which was cheap, because it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's about the same at Rogue, plus another like 60 to ship it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like anything less than $2 a pound.
Although Nick
on
is in
those weights is
Ohio,
pretty
so I
great.
could always just like,
I know, he just walk right over to Columbus, pick
Yeah.
up some
My wife's
shit
there
at
right
Rogue,
now.
and
Yeah.
there you go.
get some
Hey,
weights.
babe, get all these weights. I'll ship them
Me
to
up,
Carlos.
Nick.
Hey, when is
How
it?
much
Is
can that
it-
cost of shipping? Like,
I know.
it's
It's
200
like-
pounds in there. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure the
I just need a
Amazon
friend who's a
delivery
trucker.
driver loves you, Carlos.
Yeah. The UPS driver, when he dropped off the weights the first time, it was pretty funny. I think
Oh,
it was
poor
at
guy.
UPS or FedEx.
uh,
Yeah. But we got a full set of weights when we first got our weights.
down a little bit.
Yeah. So that was fun. But yeah, we got rower. We got we got 400 pounds in weights.
You got a box.
We got a box that I built.
Mm,
2 barbells,
Nice.
jump rope, rings.
you got it all, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you got everything.
I need that assault bike.
Yeah.
The Echo bike.
Yeah, Carlos and
And
I.
Melissa wants a GHD, but
Yeah, well, I mean, I still think that you should just buy that thing that attaches to the box.
it's just as expensive.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, never mind then. Yeah, Carlos and I actually met at a CrossFit gym, and now neither of us go to a CrossFit gym. We just work out
Nice.
in our garages now.
What made you stop though? Like just the price?
I moved, and COVID. Like
Yeah.
COVID was a big
Well,
part
yeah.
of it.
Fair
Like-
enough.
Carlos and Melissa, because our gym shut down for what, 6 months total?
I mean, shut down for 6 months during COVID, but it also
Let's
didn't
not
have
talk about the power outage. For
it
the
also
year.
didn't have electricity for like a year because of the
Are
grow
you guys still
house.
going though? Can I ask you? Were you still going during the day or something?
Oh yeah. Oh, we were still going at night. We had a
Oh
generator.
yeah, we had I remember the first. I showed up the first day when they lost the power. The owner had his Tacoma in the inside the gym running power.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was
That's
before he had a
amazing.
generator.
Yeah. It was a trying 2 years. Last 2 years at that gym. But yeah, basically then I mean after that we shut down for about 6 months, moved location, opened back up,
Yeah.
but it was limited still. We were doing everything outside. Which was nice that we had the space to do it outside. But
Yeah, it was
I mean-
a smaller location too. Like,
Yeah,
the other
I-
gym was nice and big.
you guys showed up what, like 2-3 times after that, and then
to the
I mean,
new
you
gym.
yeah, you had built your gym during COVID.
Yeah, we built our gym during COVID.
Yeah.
And so just the
Nice.
cost and, the fact that we had stuff already, and, it wasn't really like we weren't doing it outside wasn't really, our thing. even though we do our own workouts outside sometimes, but it's different when you're at home in front of your own house instead of like in front of like this busy intersection, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
So yeah, so we kind of stopped going, and even though the owner's like, well, you guys can come and drop in, and we just he had paying clients, and we said we can't right now, so
Gotcha.
That makes complete sense.
So. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah,
nice.
Well, I've finally, I said I would, Carlos. I've finally gotten back into a routine, which is nice. Which all started with me doing something that I hate, which is what was it, last week? I sent you that text that I ran 2 miles.
Yeah, you ran 2 miles, yeah.
And yeah, I hated every second of it.
I'm with Nick.
I hated it.
It depends, like sprinting or like long-term running, where it's like going for a jog every morning. I can't do that.
I mean, short distances. Yeah.
A little spurt here and there. Never hurt a person.
Yeah. So I did that, but because of how much I hate that, and this is kind of what I told Carlos when anytime I take a big break of working out, I always have to do something that I hate. To get myself back into it, because then I'm like, oh, I'll just do this. And I like that, even though I'm like out of breath or whatever. So 2 weeks ago, I did my 2 mile run, and I've been 4 days a week since then, just doing, and nice. I've been sending texts to Carlos because I need somebody to be like, look, I'm actually doing this.
You need that. Yeah. That
accountability.
Accountability. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's what I liked about going to CrossFit classes, right? I wasn't a big class like going to the gyms and like signing up for classes kind of person. Except for CrossFit. I mean, that's all it is classes with other people. So it's I do miss that part of it. But I'm still able to motivate myself, which is it's a skill. It's a skill.
Yeah.
Motivation, and also it's just like motivation, getting into the regimen of it, and then obviously following the diet, adhering to a diet. And I don't know, there's times where like I would say my hardest thing is dieting.
Yeah,
obviously.
That's most people's hardest.
That's my hardest part. I've got the exercise, I've gotten that. The diet is where I mean, my office is here and the kitchen is right here. So that makes
like right
it
behind there.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep.
Like,
right down the stairs.
I'm just gonna go mosey into the kitchen.
Get some cheese.
Yeah.
My weakness has been sourdough pretzels, like bites. Those are really good. Very good.
It's tough. It's one of those things too that like there's we're all on TikTok, right? And there are funny characters on TikTok that are, to be completely honest, kind of harmful to health and fitness. Everybody's seen the guy, the go to the fucking gym guy. Right?
I just saw another video of his today, and I was not interested.
And even with his he'll put stuff out there that's like supposed to be like he did one recently where he's like, look at you look amazing, right? But like that doesn't take away from the fact that this guy that looks the way that he does gets paid by a supplement company to do what he's doing. He gets free supplements. The nutrition is basically made out for him, like all of these types of things, right? And he's like yelling at people to go to the gym. And it's like, yes, movement is a big part of health and fitness, right? But you can do that when you're not worried about your socioeconomic status, when you're not worried about your food, when you're not worried about this or that, and all of these other things, right? And so like even there, it's one of those issues that it's like diet. I feel like nutrition is as hard as it is for a lot of people. One, because a lot of people have been told their entire life, like since the 60s and 70s, there have been a lot of weird stuff about nutrition that basically we find out just isn't true, and it's a bunch of stuff to sell you things. Right. But there is a lot of shame, whether you feel it or not. There's a shame behind nutrition, right? Where it's like, Well, I don't like.
Not,
It's like
I don't know
I'm
if
not
it's
gonna.
a shame behind nutrition. I think it's a shame of eating, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
food. It's not
yes,
nutrition itself.
right.
It's just food, right?
But it's like there are understanding yourself is one thing, right? So understanding your genetics, yourself, your predispositions, and everything else that matters, right? But
hugely.
you know, if you're going to sit there and tell yourself like, no, I'm not going to have that scoop of ice cream, I'm not going to have that scoop of ice cream, I'm not going to have that scoop of ice cream, and then finally, because you've been denying yourself for a week a scoop of ice cream, you eat a tub of ice cream.
Yep.
And then you fall into this pit of like, oh, I'm an asshole, and and like that's the biggest problem.
I'm
Whereas,
a failure, right?
yeah, and like
Yep.
Carlos and I have said this before on the podcast, but it's the idea of like, just eat the damn cookie.
Yep.
like
For real.
And that's not to say that like once you eat the cookie, like also think about the fact that like, hey, maybe I'll do a 10-minute walk, or you know what I mean. And it's not like a reward or anything like that. It's simply the idea of trying to balance things.
Exactly.
And not just saying like, I can't have this thing, because as soon as you tell yourself you can't have it, you're gonna want it, and you're gonna fall.
You're gonna go big. Right?
Yeah.
You're gonna go hot,
exactly.
hot out the gate, right?
Oh yeah.
CrossFit term.
No, and it's like thinking of the totality of your life, right? Like, sure, I can deny myself the scoop of ice cream right now, and I can deny myself the walk because it doesn't sound fun right now, but then your knees start hurting, and you start, all of these other things. Like I had a health scare last year, so I really cut down on carbs. I did the Mediterranean diet for a long time. I'm kind of off that, but I'm eating so many less carbs that the issues I had like a fatty liver. I don't know if I do. My doctor's appointment's coming up, so I'll see if I've done well enough to pass the mark. But the point is, I could feel the impact of what I was doing to my body very realistically. And that was a really good motivator to move more and to eat better. And I don't mean better in like a judgmental way. I just meant like, think about what I'm eating. Be mindful of what I'm eating. So when I am eating the cookie, that's a mindful choice rather than okay, I'll eat the one and then I'll eat 5 more.
Yeah, it's a like, goddamn, this cookie is delicious. Whoever made it is great. It's all of those types of things. Not, oh, I'm a fat slob for eating this.
Yep.
Right. Like it's the idea behind. Because when it comes down to it, like the balance and everything, and like you were saying, like there are definitely genetic and medical issues that can come into play of nutrition and of movement, right? But whether or not we it's always this idea that for the longest time people are like, oh, I don't squat because I have bad knees, and now we're coming out and we're like, no, you have bad knees because you don't squat.
Yep.
Right. And it's that turnaround of like, oh shit. But
exactly.
All that to say is we're gonna do a fitness challenge soon, guys. So you'll
I'm in. I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm in.
You'll be a part of it. Carlos has really been wanting to do it, so we're gonna figure something out. We're gonna find a way to do it. Honestly, I'm just thinking about this now, Carlos. Our Discord might be the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Send people. Nobody knows that we have a Discord. Carlos and I are the only people on it.
Oh, you mean our the one that I started? Like,
yeah, our Discord.
That would require me like having to manage it, and I don't know if I could do that. Yeah, let's wrangle Callie
we'll
into managing it for us.
Throw Callie into just another Discord.
Hey, you want to manage this one for us too?
I feel like because we've done so many Rings
of Power
episodes,
like,
I know, right? I feel like because we've done so many Rings of Power episodes lately and not as many of our regular ones, we haven't shouted out Callie as often as we normally do. Callie, you're amazing. You brought this group together. You're the only reason why Nic and Pete are here today.
Yep,
it's true.
Pretty much.
So we need you to know that.
I was telling.
Yeah, I think Callie's the only reason why. Yeah, I think the only reason why we probably still have a podcast too.
No.
We had
that's actually true.
I mean, I thought Chris was firing me when he's like, "We need to talk." And he had this
You're off the podcast.
I was like, dude, it's my Zoom. What are you talking about? I'm off the podcast.
I mean, I don't know that you guys have seen this or heard it, but yeah, I mean, like Carlos and I were pretty much done before we met all of you. I was so much.
Chris was done.
I was done, but in like that, I'm the one who produces this.
Yeah. So we would have been done, right?
Yeah, and so I mean,
So
basically,
why?
The Rings of Power.
Yeah, it came down to the fandom.
The pre-fandom, like just toxicity, right? And so we had a conversation about that, and I told he asked me, he's like, well, how do you deal with this? Because a lot of the negativity was around black elves, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I try not to like pay attention to it. Like I don't give two shits, right? Like doesn't take away from me if they want to feel that way, whatever. Like they're gonna lose out. And what ultimately came from that was me reaching out to Willie on his Instagram, because that was the only way we could reach out to him, because we didn't have a Discord, or we didn't have a TikTok. And I can't message you on TikTok if we're not friends. Right. So, I was like, well, I'm just going to, shot in the dark, send him a message on Instagram. He got back to us and he's like, send me a podcast. I had just happened to send him the dwarfs one that we did, which was like probably the perfect podcast to send.
It really was.
Right. Right. And then, we had him on the show and it was great. And he, put us in touch with Callie and kind of, all that, all this has come from that, right? So like the trivia stuff and, our TikTok, man. And, all that. So,
and what time was that? Like what date?
We could probably look at the,
yeah, I mean, I could tell you exactly.
I mean,
see.
I had a pretty similar like experience with the whole like Rings of Power thing, because like, for a while I was just kind of incognito. I like had a TikTok because my girlfriend convinced me, and then like she's like, oh, look at this Lord of the Rings guy, and it was Willie, and and then there was the whole like Facebook groups. I was in like multiple groups just to like see posts and stuff, and it just started becoming like huge arguments all the time, because I'm Puerto Rican, and like Arondir is the actor Ismael is Puerto Rican. It was really nice. I got a chance to meet him. He's a cool guy, and it's just I got so angry, and I think one of it came to a breaking point when someone had posted a variation of Finrod Felagund where he was like darker complexion and everything like that, and it was beautiful. It was gorgeous art. He had like flowing blonde hair and everything. It was like it was stunning. And someone said some ridiculous thing, and the admins, I hit up the admins. I'm like, you're gonna say anything about this or like do anything about this or whatever? And I was just like, you know what, I'm done. And I quit every group. I think I'm in like one now, and I just quit everything. And then I ended up in the live for the trivia thing.
That's how I got it. Same.
I think that's how we got introduced to you guys was through the
But I was done. I was
done.
I just went in there randomly.
So it was February 6th.
February.
February
last
6th
year
of 2022.
Oh yeah, tonight. Oh yeah, I have it tonight on a very special episode. That's what I titled the folder.
It's the only episode.
A one and only.
It's the only episode that we've recorded and I posted on the exact same day.
Wow.
And it's just called The State of Swolhirrim. So it's just me basically talking about like the state of everything and how, I mean, like there have been multiple times where I've almost and have cried on this podcast, but like the State of Swolhirrim was definitely one where I was just done. Like I felt like there was no reason to do it anymore. There was so many people spewing so much hate, getting so many views and comments, and we're sitting here with like 20 people listening to our podcast, and I was just like, fuck this noise. Like, what's the point? And that's where Carlos, the one thing that I've in my head. The one thing that still sticks in my head is Carlos saying those are the people that we want to listen. And that 20, was like that, right. Like that was 20. It.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. Like he was like, well, we've created an environment in our podcast that those are the people that we want to be listening to our podcast.
Great.
And we don't want the the 2,000 douchebags that are listening to Nerdrotic or whatever the fuck that guy's name is.
Don't even
Oh
speak
gosh,
his name.
dude. I'm
I don't
I'm
give
one of
a
those
fuck.
people.
His name was Mike. No.
I'm one of those people though. Like I watched like multiple videos of Nerdrotic to see like his deal. And
Yeah.
he is.
I wanted to know him. Like I wanted to get his shtick to
like
really
regardless
see.
of Rings of Power.
No.
Godspeed to you, sir. That's all
Yeah.
I'll say. Godspeed.
Yeah.
That trajectory is.
I mean, but
going.
it's crazy because it really is like, it really does come down to like, yes, like, Willie, because he has the spotlight on him.
Yeah.
Was definitely, a starter for a lot of us. But I mean, Callie is the epicenter.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
Callie was a very the episode that we did with Callie was a very like lovey, mushy at the end, right? Just
Oh,
thanking
yeah.
her for everything that she's done, right? And it's true. Like she's the admin for our Discord, right? She's responsible for like really kind of putting all this stuff together, the trivia,
Yeah.
right? Like getting all
She
that.
facilitates so much.
Yeah,
She
and,
does so
and-
much.
Yeah, and without that Discord, I think none of us would probably be communicating with each other. Maybe, right? But it's definitely made it a lot easier, and we were able to do the Mordor, the Mordor challenge, and that was fun, and yeah, it's been a great experience since that episode, and I'm kind of glad that we did reach out to him, and I'm really glad that he responded, and because I'd been seeing New Meta's stuff on Reddit for the longest time, and I think the one that I didn't
It was
have
the
a TikTok.
code switching.
It was the code switching one.
Oh
right?
my god, I loved it.
That's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Oh.
And,
Because yeah, it was.
And then
was
he
the
dropped
co-
the
it was the
like
code
Gimli
switching
thing.
and
Gimli
the
talking to Galadriel. It was just like hilarious.
Yeah.
It was too much for a while.
it was for me. It was the Wu-Tang one. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
That was
absolutely.
so
that was my favorite.
Yeah.
And so so it's been great.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and a big part of that is like, so I mean, man, we're going off of a tangent here. We're getting to spooky stuff, guys. I promise we're getting
After
to
all
spooky
the
stuff.
after all the mushy stuff, we'll
Right.
get to the spookies.
But it's just so funny because like one of the reasons why we started, and this is why I was so drawn to his code switching, was one of the biggest reasons why I started this is with the amount of love that I have for some other Tolkien podcasts that I listen to. A majority of them hold Tolkien sacrosanct. And it's like very almost scriptural the way that they talk about it. It's very like reverent and stuff. And Carlos and I are over here being like, yeah, this motherfucker did this thing, right?
Yep.
And like,
I can't really I can't always like agree with that because Tolkien himself wouldn't really agree with that. He's
Right.
so like self-reflective as well as almost to the point of being abusive to like certain things that he just did not like. He hated.
Yep.
And it's just strange for people to really consider him like. So I don't know how to say it. To your point, like almost biblical, because you look at most of like the majority of his work out right now. It was put together by his son.
Yeah.
It was like
Right.
people swearing by the Silmarillion with like the Rings of Power thing, for example. It's like, hey, you don't even know if this is exactly what Tolkien wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
And,
and
like-
that's, I mean, there's so much of that too, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of Tolkien spinning in his grave for anything, it's like, fuck you, you don't know the guy,
Shut
he's
the fuck
dead.
It'd be
up.
amazing.
Like-
if anyone spinning in their grave. That'd be crazy.
That's a pretty good
And
That's
transition
pretty-
to spooky.
Yeah.
That's pretty spooky right
Disembodied
there.
hands.
Yeah.
Just...
Yeah, I mean, so it is spooky season. Let's just jump right into it. We're
I mean-
talking about people spinning in their
we've
graves.
had this background, this spooky
We've had
background,
this background. We got bats.
whole
We got
time.
jack-o'-lanterns. We got.
which is weird, because we don't post anything on YouTube
Shut
anymore.
up!
So
I
it doesn't
posted
really matter.
all of the Rings of Power episodes on YouTube.
Did you really?
I did.
I
Wow.
never
I
got a
actually
single
saw that. I've watched a
notification.
couple.
Oh,
That's
so
actually
you
the
gotta-
main way
I
I
gotta go watch
like
them.
watch most of your reaction videos.
Oh,
I
there you
I
go.
don't use Spotify really. I
Oh,
never use
okay.
it.
Well, see, then I
I've only
guess
listened. So
I guess I
should go
should
to
put them
YouTube.
on YouTube more.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, we're talking about monsters. So like that's one of the things, right? Yeah, this is something that I've been thinking about doing. So we've been doing this podcast for about 2 years. This is something that I've wanted to do a little bit for at least a year and a half now. But Pete actually, with his awesome kind of monster TikToks lately, really drove
Very
that
silly.
home. And that's why
No,
that's
they're
kind of
great,
why
dude.
I that's why I wanted Pete and Nick on here, is because not only that, but I know that Pete, you're a horror fan, for sure.
Big
So,
horror fan, definitely.
Nice.
so we're talking monsters, and monsters are not something that, you know, a lot of people think about, especially if they're mostly into The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, right? They're not getting super into all of the different, you know, creatures, monsters, all of that stuff that exists. But I mean, we're talking wargs, werewolves, dragons, wolves, spiders, vampires, orcs, trolls. Like, you know, we've got necromancers, for
Hurons.
better or worse. You know,
Wraiths,
necromancers.
wights, you know.
Yeah, like
Yep.
the I mean, the most terrifying thing, in my opinion, in the Lord of the Rings is the barrow wights. Like those are
Oh, so
like
scary.
that whole scene is terrifying, and the fact that it's not in the Peter Jackson movies, I understand why there's no Tom Bombadil and all of that stuff, so it makes a little bit of sense. But that's scary shit.
They would have
And
recognized
Peter
that
would
the
have done so
Fellowship-
good.
Oh yeah,
Exactly.
with his
exactly.
background in horror,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
The people that they would have to admitted that the Fellowship of the Ring is pretty much a horror book.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
it pretty much is a horror book in
It
itself.
really is,
Yeah.
dude.
The way it reads, like the descriptions of certain things, like even when they're leaving, they're going through the thorn bush, kind of heading towards farmer maggots.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they like look back and they see like kind of this dark shape, these two dark shapes kind of like
Right.
move along the line of the hill above them, and they're like, whoa, what's that? And they're like, they were being followed the whole time. It's just like stuff like that with like specifically the ring wraiths, which are
Right.
the
Absolutely
Nazgul
terrifying.
are crazy frightening in my opinion for like
yeah.
a fantasy book.
And they really are, right? I mean, you're like, that's the thing, is when we're looking, even watching, like thinking about watching the ring, like the Lord of the Rings for the first time, which, by the way, I've seen that type of thing go around a lot. Like if you could watch something again for the first time, 100% it would be the trilogy. 100%.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, I could definitely do. I saw all the movies in like theater as well, so absolutely.
I didn't,
100%.
because I was not allowed to, because I was on a religious mission in Mexico at the time.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I'm not ashamed of this story. I was 9 when Fellowship came out.
Okay.
And I was scared shitless. So scared that we had to leave.
Oh shit.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh,
Damn.
man.
By the time
Well,
the orcs freaked me out so much that I like couldn't calm down, and then the wizard battle happened, I was like, oh fuck, what's happening with Gandalf? Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. And my mom was like, okay, we should go.
Like, we're just gonna
So you
leave.
didn't see Gandalf die in the when you
Not in the
no, you'd be
theaters.
Not in the
traumatized.
theater. Yeah,
Exactly.
you would have been.
I
Oh my god.
It would have been.
Like,
But then
Nick
fucking
would
3
still
months
be in
later,
a corner, like rocking
you wouldn't
back
be
and
here.
forth.
Well,
Yeah.
like you would not be here.
But then, you know,
Talking
5
Tolkien.
months later, when the VHS came out, not even the DVD,
Yeah,
the
right.
VHS, because that was that time where they were still releasing both. I got the VHS and watched it during the daytime, as I do, and yeah, fucking loved it.
And you were okay then.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
But you're right? I mean, like, we're in the movies, our first sense of like terror comes from the Nazgul,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
right?
And-
like that's and even a little bit the Ring, right? Because
Yeah.
just the darkness
Yes.
of the Ring, the scariness of the Ring, right?
And the
Gandalf,
sound engineering,
It's
right?
it's the unseen
oh.
aspect of like, and this is true with like any kind of horror movie, right? The
Mhm.
the monster loses its impact once you
Once you
see
see
what
it.
it looks like, right?
right?
Because what you don't know is more terrifying than what you do know.
So
And-
and
John Carpenter's The Thing, or Halloween are perfect examples of that.
Yeah.
We're like,
Yeah.
what's the scariest part of The Thing? It's not knowing who's actually like a real human at that point. Who's
Right.
the
Which-
alien.
which I would say, when it comes to horror pieces of Tolkien, one of the best places that he does that is him telling us that Baron won't even speak of the nightmares that he went through, and I can't even say it. Nandargortheb.
Nandungortheb.
Yeah, like that is
Nandungortheb,
perfect.
I believe,
Like
yeah.
that is perfect. I am going to make you terrified.
Yep. Oh
because
yeah.
it is Baron
Nightmare
getting
fuel.
through that, and it is fucking nightmare fuel. Like
It is,
that is
and
just
that's
like
at Taran Farith, and like that used to be Dorthonian, but
yeah,
what's actually happening there, even like I know there's Ungoliant, which is one thing.
Right.
Okay, but the forces like what magical forces of Sauron and Melion and the Girdle are like colliding with each other.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the description Tolkien uses in that, it's very rare to hear him like really talk this way, is like just sheer madness, like
yeah,
created
Yeah.
out of it.
yeah.
And like true horror exists there. And I always wondered like what he means by that. Because our standard of horror now in the 21st century is far different than what his
point.
was in his time. And even then, like they still had like, you know, he'd been exposed to Asimov, I'm pretty sure. He was exposed to obviously Mary Shelley,
Right.
Bram Stoker, some of the older writers.
Even things like Poe and Wells and some of this
Poe,
stuff.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yep.
But even like I'm thinking more mythology too, with the more horror aspects of that, where he probably read up on like the first aspects of like vampires or spirits or wraiths, especially Celtic, Irish, and Scottish lore is like so heavily like bound with the idea. Yeah, it's just like frightening. Even Fae and Irish like mythology is so frightening. Like it's so frightening.
It is.
And like thinking
Hide
about
your
that,
kids,
just
hide
like
your
what
wife, honestly.
but it makes you wonder like what was going down in that small little like crest like near the mountains of like the northern portion of Beleriand.
Wild.
It's like, and it's just like I always picture it as like, because he's claimed to be a necromancer at times, like I would imagine just like wraiths and spirits and like almost like Walking Dead aspects, and then there's just like vampires probably rolling around there, because I think in the Baron and Luthien story, one of the only ways that Juan and Luthien can get through, or I'm sorry, Baron and Luthien can get through is, as a vampire and a werewolf. They have to, take on guises. It's the only way they get through all the way to Angband, of course.
And there are things that flee from them, like scary things that go bump in the night that flee from them, right? But it's like
oh fuck, Theron Gwethel's coming. Fuck, get out!
It's Theron Gwethel, and then he looks like Dragoline, who have both died after the first like conflict between Juan, Baron, and Luthien in like Tolkien.
And like that's the thing is in that area, and that's why that's one of my favorite pieces of writing, is because it really is this moment of like he says so much by saying so little.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like by telling us that one, it is a place of madness because of these two magical forces, and I think what a lot of people, or at least me, something that I forgot about a little bit is the idea that like Melian and Sauron are basically the same.
It's the same,
right? Like they are very, very similar in being in power. And so when you've got their two forces kind of colliding, I mean, I don't know what type of shit is happening there. I mean, is there, and not only that, but you have to think also about, this made me think a lot about what it was that both of those forces were doing. So like Melian, yes, she is a Maya and a force for good, but what she was trying to do was keep things out. And so, I mean, like that could mean that there are not necessarily scary things, but powerful things trying to keep you out. And if that collides with other like malevolent forces,
right,
trying to come in, you've got some crazy shit that's happening.
The unintended consequences.
Right. It's not like Melian's. It's not like Melian's magic in her realm was like unicorns and butterflies. That's not what that was for. That was her magic was meant to keep people out, right? To repel. Yep. And so it's, I mean,
it's an opposite of Sauron, because you would think as Sauron as himself, even as Gorthar the Cruel, which like his name was at that time, was still consistently looking for control and order. Right. And if he did have like some similar force, like, because I would say Sauron is stronger than Melian, because Melian's more like,
call Willie.
I don't. I would like Sauron is stronger than Melian. Yeah, Sauron is stronger than Melion because Melion is more, I find, attached to Arda, being that she's like married and like
And had a
is with
child there.
Thingol and had a
Yes,
child
yes.
and like like Sauron is still, very
He's
much
full blown Maya.
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
that time
exactly.
still,
But
yeah.
he still adheres to some form, the same way that Morgoth does when he comes in his second iteration. Like he's weaker,
Right.
far weaker than any point in his life.
But
But, like,
Melion can't change her form anymore. She can't
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
she had what's the line, like the trammels of the world. Like she's not fully incarnate like in Astari, but
Right.
she's getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
pretty much. Like if she had been around for like, I don't know, an age or something, she would have been more like elf than anything.
Yes.
Whatever.
yes.
Who are we to know? But anyways, the whole point being is that Sauron is encroaching and constantly. So, and she's probably using all of her power at this point to keep the girdle up. Like you
Right.
don't really hear about Melion doing much else than weaving, making Lembas, and chilling with Galadriel.
Right.
And
Talk
being
to
the
Moblung
wisest
sometime.
motherfucker in the whole
Yeah,
book.
like
Yeah.
No one
and
knows.
having the
And always
stupidest
being
husband
fucking
in Middle
ignored.
Earth
never
history.
being listened to, right?
Fucking
Elu
patriarchy,
Thingol.
man.
Right.
Elu Thingol, what were you up to? I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, like it's the straight terror of that. And it's just like these strange opposite forces like trying to encroach on each other. And like to your point, like, I'm a really big Stephen King fan. I've read like all of his books. And I used to like H.P. Lovecraft. I don't anymore for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And obvious reasons.
Right.
And
Right.
but there is that like concept of the unknown that Tolkien really takes advantage of a lot of the times, even with like, jumping two ages ahead to the third age on Weathertop, when like Frodo puts the ring on and what he sees, and they're like the scrunched up white faces, gleaming helmets, and blades on fire. And it's just like, even then, we don't really understand what's going on. The same thing with Nan Dungortheb. We don't like understand what possible hell has been created by the sheer force of just like magical beings in Middle Earth, because we don't even understand magic to a full extent.
Exactly.
Right. Like that's the thing, is like it's not like I'm not and I've talked about this before. I'm not a huge like fantasy buff, honestly, but I do know that most fantasy realms have rules around magic. Those rules around magic in like Arda, we don't really know. Tolkien never really laid those out, outside of the fact that music is one of them.
It's also I think magic in the sense of like that's what we would define it as, right? We would see that and we'd say that's magic, right? But they're essentially demigods, right? So it's not really magic.
Galadriel says that. She says like, this is what you might consider magic, but to me it's just like, this is who I am.
This
like,
is just what I do.
Yeah.
Like I chill with my like fear of Galadriel. I look at it sometimes, it's crazy. Like it's like,
I'm pretty sure most of y'all, I've talked about that letter that he wrote where he describes the two different kinds of magic, like magia and
some of the G word.
Goetia, I think. Old English is weird, but Goetia is more like what we think of when you're like casting a spell versus magia being more innate. Like so
it's
basically
just who you are.
Right. Like elves, just the ability to think of an idea and achieve the thing is faster for them.
Right.
So for them, the thing just happens. To us, it looks like it snap of a finger just happens, but it's their innate ability.
You mentioned it some aspect of that the other day when we obviously ask each other trivia questions.
Yeah.
We're on the same trivia team, which you should check out on Sunday, being hosted by a couple of gentlemen here. But like you mentioned it too, with Finrod meeting men for the first time, he's just able to understand them by reading their minds. And it's like, okay, well, apparently elves can just read your mind if they really want to, and not in like an invasive way, but like they just speak to you through your mind.
And Tolkien talks about that. So we'll get in there when we start talking about Sauron more in depth. I have a thought there, but he talks about the concept. He calls it Osanwe. That's I think the Quenya word for it. I don't remember. But all incarnate beings technically have this ability. It's just about how strong their will is. So like we see this with Pippin when he looks in the Palantir. Talk about another freaky scene.
Yeah.
He can barely hold on to his own will, right? Well, Sauron is just bearing down on him. What the fuck? That's incredible. And that's through basically a Middle Earth cell phone or Zooms or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. FaceTime.
FaceTime.
Yeah, it's FaceTime.
Yep.
Oh man.
No, like and it is like it's crazy the magic and the mystery that we get out of some of these things that we when you dive into it, right? And it's not always at the forefront. I do think that there are scary things about Lord of the Rings, scary things even about The Hobbit, right? But these are things that pass quickly when you think about the other stuff.
Yes.
Right. It's not something that you always go back to, but man, is it there, especially when you get into some of the other things. Right. But like, I mean, we were talking about this place of this magic of this, this colliding magic. And it was to a point where Baron came out looking 10 years older.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like,
but
what
who
the
else?
fuck
Someone else
happened
went
to
through
that
that place, didn't they?
They did.
Aradel?
There was one other person. So
What didn't Aradel like
Arathel,
Turgon's?
yeah.
Arathel. I'm
Arathel.
sorry. I
Yeah.
always say it's the DH sound. I gotta
I
remember
know,
it's DH.
same.
Damn you, Martin Shaw. No.
Right, exactly. Fucking Martin
Damn
Shaw,
you,
come
Martin
on.
Shaw.
He's so good.
Daddy
but come on.
Quetzal.
Oh my gosh.
and
It's like an Aztec.
Iluvatar. That's how
Oh,
I said it for
Iluvatar,
so
like,
long.
oh,
God damn
Jesus.
it.
Oh,
Carlos
man.
corrected me. I was
Yeah.
like, motherfucker.
I'm like,
You're
that's
right.
not. I'm pretty sure that's not how you say it.
Iluvatar.
Yeah.
There's like this thing in the back of the book that like just
Yeah.
kind of tells you how to pronounce
you
this stuff. I don't know if
exactly.
you checked.
There's
I don't
also
think Martin Shaw did.
there's
And that's
also a
actually
website
exactly
where
what
you
I
can like
did.
find that out.
Is I looked it up and I looked up like how to say specific things, and I went back to Carlos, and it's on a podcast. I was like, Carlos, I have to apologize. You're right. I was saying
Yeah.
Iluvatar incorrectly.
Damn.
Well,
I
I think he also says Aula.
Yeah,
He says
I
a
think
lot
so.
of things
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love his Silmarillion
Oh,
is amazing.
Incredible.
The music's the best. It's like
But-
so random.
I
Like,
know.
and it's just like boom, 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 boom. boom. Like, are those tambourines? What are you doing? Like,
It's so good.
is Martin
But-
Shaw playing them while he like talks?
I know, right?
Better, right?
But
It's
it
hard
just
to
is
fall asleep to that when that music comes on.
when
You're
it
like,
comes
"Gonna
on,
wake
and
up."
it's suddenly like, yeah. It's like, oh, I'm at the end of the chapter.
But yeah, Arathel goes through it as well with like her guards from Gondolin to get to like the Nan Elmoth,
Right.
like,
Yes.
and it's
Yes.
just like what did she see? They were like supposedly some crazy stuff went down because they got
Right.
separated,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
somehow she got out of there fine and dandy. But
And,
Baron,
like-
being a man, he could not handle it. He could not
Right,
handle
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And from hers, I feel like it seems to be like a lot of like
It's that
mist
unseen-
and ghosts
yeah.
and like
It's the unseen part, right? Because
Right.
there's that other plane, right? The plane that the
Mm.
ring wraiths are on, right? The
Yeah.
spiritual plane.
Exactly.
And
Whenever
so,
like
like, I
Frodo
think-
puts the ring on.
And
Yes.
I think the elves in the first age, they're a little bit closer to they're tied closer to that, right? So that doesn't affect them as much as what I would
Mm.
assume is the case. Whereas Baron is just a dude who just happened to be in there, right?
who's just
And-
walking through
who's just-
nightmare.
yeah,
Like
He's just like,
I
I'm
gotta
kind of
get
fed
outta
up
here."
with this joint. I'm gonna
Yeah.
die. I better go south to my
because
kin.
on top of all
Holy
of that,
crap! Is that a giant spider? Like
exactly. Like, that's the thing, right? Is on top of everything else, it's like, oh, okay, this is also where there's a giant spider who is now spawning other giant spiders.
Yeah.
Fuck
devouring
this
male
noise.
spiders, like just
That-
like
yeah.
mating and eating them, and eventually
Even-
eating herself. Like
Even
Ugh.
worse, she could have been other forms and said, "No, this is how I want to look. This
Right.
is how I want to be. I want to be a giant fucking spider."
Well,
with
and like
horns."
that's the
Oh my
thing is
God.
like we think about like so when I think about Ungoliant, let's go to that because spiders are fucking terrifying no matter who you are.
The only
I don't want.
Ungoliant that I
I'll
like
tell you a story. I'll tell you a
is-
story about spiders.
The only Ungoliant that I like is the one from Shadows of War. Or whatever it is.
Sexy Shelob.
Sexy Shelob.
There you go.
I still haven't played those games. I have to get around to it.
I've only
Like,
played the
I-
first one. I've heard about the second one, and I was like, oh my god, I don't know if
I
I'd
heard it
play
was
that one.
wild too. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Pete, I need to know your spider story because we're moving on
I'm
to
scared.
Ungoliant.
I'm scared of spiders, man.
I
Like
hate
I'm actually
spiders.
like I'm scared of spiders. But I listen to this other podcast, this horror podcast called No Sleep Podcast, and
dude.
I've
Yes.
listened to that.
I listened to all of it. I'm like I almost
Okay.
considered going to they're doing this thing in Colorado. I'm actually was born in Colorado, but they're doing something at the Stanley Hotel, the Outlook Hotel, and they're
Mhm.
having this whole like event where you can meet Mike Flanagan, the guy who did like all the Netflix horror shows that have been coming out, and he also
Mhm.
did He did Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining.
Yeah, so he's doing
Nice.
the Fall of the House of Usher, and I'm so fucking excited.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
exactly.
That's
exactly.
coming out next year, and I'm stoked about that. Anyway, sorry.
It's really awesome. It's really awesome. But there's a story there that talks about like this forest, and it's just the way the story was described, and like my girlfriend knows about it. I made her listen to it too, where like they end up meeting this like hybrid spider girl, and she's like the size of a car, and the way they describe it, like I had nightmares for weeks after about it, just like scared of some horrifying hybrid creature coming to my window and just being like, ah! I was like, no.
I mean, that's like, so the one thing that I used to do on Reddit is I would go to No Sleep on Reddit.
All the time.
And
all the time.
And when you can't sleep, right?
Yeah. And there was
or like at 10 a.m.
There
whatever.
was a whole subreddit about, I don't know if you guys ever read these, about the National Forest Service search and rescue guy.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It was
absolutely.
So Ariel, my partner, there was one that like we read all of them, right? But there was one where it talks about the boy camping, and he's camping with his Native American friend, right? And this like deer walking on its hind legs come up and like starts talking to him, right?
Don't say the word.
And Ariel is just like, she's like, I can't look at deer anymore. Like I can't go into the woods. I can't look like no. Like it's absolutely not.
One of the first stories I ever heard that actually got me into like the whole no sleep thing was Ted the Caver. I don't know. It's a really
I don't know
old
if I know that one.
Ted the Caver. It's one of the first because no one could tell if it was real or fake. Because that's the point of no sleep,
right?
At least how the first iterations was that like you couldn't tell if it was a real or fake story. And nowadays, like obviously you can. Dudes talk about demon heads popping out of the walls and stuff, and you're like, that could be real. But anyways, like
take enough tabs of acid, and it's
it can be real if you put your mind to it. Like But this whole thing was about this guy who found this cave system, and he was like posting real pictures of him in the cave and like his friend and all these like very detailed points that only a caver would know, and like how they like went in there and they found this crack and he went through and all this stuff, and one other person tried to, and it's just crazy because it's like there's something down there and they don't know what it is, and it's just once again back to that unknown. That's probably why I like Ungoliant the most, is like I hate spiders, don't get me wrong, but just like her actions seem so like they embody certain like vices, negative portions of humanity. This gluttony, for example, and like and like I know Tolkien never intended to have any like really serious religious themes in his story. He actually like stated that he's like, I wasn't really trying to have like a high level
you are who
exactly.
You write what you know, right? And
but even old Greek mythos and really focused on these flaws of humanity, narcissism, for example, hubris, huge factor of it, even Germanic lore like Beowulf the same way. And like Ungoliant is the epitome of gluttony. There's not many forms of it in any of the rest of Tolkien either, and we see that so much. And even so, like they say, like apparently she devoured herself in the end.
Right.
Sauron's pride, right? So if Ungoliant's gluttony, right? Sauron's pride.
All right, let's figure them all out.
Let's figure them out.
Also,
you put them in there somewhere.
Carlos, you put me in the perfect location because it's dark here mostly, but I'm right underneath the moon, and it's like if you're not watching this on YouTube, guys, you really should, because it's just like it's just it looks great right now.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing, right? Is like he gave us, like you said, this is one of the few times where he full on gave us like a vice. Her only true goal was to devour.
Yep.
That's really what she existed for, which is why I kind of argue against the idea that she was a Maya.
I don't think she's a Maya either.
Yeah, I feel like she's more one of those, especially, and we get this in the book of, well, yeah, exactly. We get this in the book of Lost Tales, in this idea that like there were other beings
definitely
also came down to Arda, right? And that's kind of where I see her as, is this like being of darkness.
She's the Discord.
Took the form of she is just like she's there to devour.
Tom could also be the Discord, right?
Right.
Ooh.
Tommy B.
Ooh.
Tommy B. I hate when people say he's a Louvetar. I'm like, that man is
It's the
something
fucking
else.
worst. It's the fucking
You
worst.
can't say he's a
Like,
Louvetar.
stop
Louvetar
that.
It's
is
a
like,
weak argument. It's such
Yeah.
a weak
it's
argument.
like, come on, man. Why would a Louvetar really be doing what Tommy B's doing, trying to like, bang a water spirit or whatever, like a river spirit? I'm just gonna throw that out there. Like, I don't mean to be that way, but like,
I
it's
mean, I don't know.
very
You've
just.
got the god.
Zeus
I don't.
did it.
I
Zeus
know. I was
did
gonna
it.
say. You've got Zeus. You've got the god of. I don't know if you've ever watched Supernatural, but the god of
Yeah.
Supernatural world just comes down and is just
Oh
an
yeah, he
ordinary
does. Oh,
dude.
man, it's such a weird
Yeah.
story. And then they blast him with a shotgun or something. I
Yeah, it's
forget how
great.
that's it.
I fucking
I
love
was
it.
like, wow, wow, that's pretty crazy.
But
But
outside of that,
Ungoliant, there's other spirits that exist like in the realm of, and you like know this, you've read Book of Lost Tales, Rose Silmarillion, there's other spirits that come down.
yes.
There's, for
Okay.
one example, like, the things that were spawned from Morgoth or Melkor in his first iterations, where you heard of creatures with like horn and becoming violent and so forth. But there's
Yep.
also other spirits like, the Watcher is something that we don't truly understand in
Yeah.
itself. Like, and another thing that you could argue is like, you look at stuff like vampires and werewolves are so different than how they work in actual horror stories we know so well, where they're not like these iterations where they transform when there's a full moon, or you have to be
Right.
bitten to be a vampire. They're vengeful spirits possessing creatures,
Right.
and then like almost like mutating into like far more violent things or like horrendous things.
Well, and
And it's
we get some beautiful images of that too. I mean, you say beautiful, but it's horror, but that doesn't take away from the beauty of the
No.
writing, right? I mean, I still think that one of the most terrifying moments of Tolkien's writing is the death of Finrod.
Ooh.
Finrod and Beren being that dungeon, and every one of their companions, one by one, being devoured by werewolves while they just sit there and watch. And then
wait.
Finrod, I mean, like, for all of you who got into Tolkien and found our podcast because of Rings of Power, I know that you saw scratches on Finrod, and I know that you heard about Galadriel talking about Finrod. Finrod naked wrestled a werewolf and tore him apart with his bare fucking hands as he died.
The
Hell
truest G
yeah.
that ever was.
It's insane. Like, and that, like, that moment, that darkness, that like evil that existed there, I feel like we get so much of that with wolves. I don't know what it was with Tolkien and wolves, but holy shit, like wolves are terrifying in his world, because we've got wolves, we've got wargs, and we've got werewolves.
Yep.
Right? And they're all different things.
Yes.
To be completely honest, I didn't know what the fuck the difference was between a wolf and a warg until today. It was today.
Very recent for me too. Like, I realized what a warg and a wolf, like, we're not this same descriptive thing. Like, I was just like, yeah, it's
like a demon-possessed wolf. A
Yep.
demon-possessed wolf is essentially what a warg is. Wargs have their own fucking language. That's terrifying. You want this giant-ass chihuahua that Rings of Power gave us?
Oh my god, that thing's so
speaking to each other.
Looking. Like, get out of here!
Insane. Like,
anyone who said that design was like terrible, like, has never been attacked by a chihuahua.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Chihuahuas are terrifying.
Like, I've never seen a small dog come for your ankles and you're like running for your life, trying to open the door while they're just like nipping at you. Never.
I literally see it every day when my chihuahua attacks my Doberman.
I live it, Pete. I live it.
He's like a miniature chihuahua.
Yeah, she's tiny. But it's just
hilarious.
Like it really is terrifying what he does with wolves in the Legendarium, right? Because like we get some scary instances with wolves in general. So like when they're marching through the snow, right? And they get attacked. Again, anybody who's just seen the movies, you don't know about this part unless you've listened to Tolkien with Friends.
Yeah.
She's talked about this multiple times.
Very true.
But the the moment where they are attacked and surrounded by wolves, right? Once they get back down from the mountain. That's a very scary moment. It's that what's in the darkness type of thing, right? And again, Tolkien is great with this, like, what is in the darkness? And then he gives us, and then like just anybody who's like casually, hey, I'm gonna pick up the Silmarillion, what the fuck, there's werewolves?
Yep.
You're like, yeah, totally. And it's like it's so chill on. It's like, hey, yeah, Baron's down there. Well, you didn't know this is the Isle of Werewolves, and it's like you have an island dedicated to werewolves. You're like, yeah, it used to be the Tower of Wizardry, but we moved on from that.
We fixed it. We fixed it. It's fine.
We've
new
upgraded.
management.
We've
New
upgraded.
management.
and it is crazy because like I mean, like you were saying, Pete, and maybe this is something that you could speak on a little bit more because you have been doing those TikTok latelys. One of the things that I found about like werewolves is essentially this idea that like they are these malevolent spirits of either men or elves. We really don't know that were kind of twisted into with the form of a wolf. And then, like you said, a werewolf isn't necessarily like they're not changing on the full moon. They simply are this always.
They're not lycanthropes. They just are.
Yeah. They just are. And in my mind, what I have always thought when I've seen this outside of Karkaroth, oddly enough, what I have always seen is basically like the werewolf of Van Helsing. Like when what's his name? Hugh Jackman turns into a werewolf. Like that.
I love that movie. I don't care what anyone says.
It's an amazing movie.
It's great. I love it.
It's the dialogue Dracula says is so wild.
He is one of the best Draculas. His drama and everything is so fantastic.
Dude, I like if they came out, like I don't care about Wolverine. If they came out with the Helsing 2, I would like flip a shit. I'd be like, oh my god.
I want that. I want that. Sorry, Hugh. That's what I want.
That's what we want,
that
guys.
was wild. Like,
fuck your Deadpool 3. We want Van Helsing 2.
Holy shit. Werewolves are strange, like because werewolves are actually, a lot of people think they're just European lore. They actually are Indian, they're European, they're Asian. There's so many different iterations of like crazed, possessed wolves, and I would imagine that Tolkien took most of his inspiration from the idea of like a wolf, or what he thinks is a werewolf, from like more German, if not Nordic, like folklore. But yeah, they're actually the same idea that these spirits, these lesser spirits that exist in the world, that came down into Arda, and can actually almost be manipulated by individuals like Sauron, which is one of the reasons why I think necromancer is a really appropriate term for him, because a necromancer isn't someone that's just with the dead. You could almost twist it to be someone who could control spirits. And he's able to take these spirits and pour them into these, creatures, one being a wolf, and and mutilate them almost, or maybe Morgoth does, better yet, to almost like take on more ferocious forms, and then have an identity too. So it like supersedes the whole like idea of having the imperishable flame in them. And I really think that there's like almost like a linear like way that this works, where we started with werewolves, and then it like wolves into werewolves into wargs, and it's like kind of how it worked in the end. But yeah, there's like different iterations of like empowerment too, where like Sauron empowered one wolf, like that fights them in Tol Sirion, while Morgoth with Karkaroth lets him feed on his blood as well. I'm sorry, or something like that, and he becomes like ferocious as well. So there's definitely an aspect of like these lesser spirits being capable of being empowered, possessing, and taking like new forms in Middle Earth, which is like, it's just like barely mentioned. Like Tolkien's like, yeah, vengeful spirits possess this thing. It was bad.
Right. But that's the thing, is like dwelling on and kind of, like I said, with the wargs, so like that's something that I didn't know until literally today. Right. But like with other things, I mean, dwelling on these things that Tolkien just gives us very little of, but enough to be terrified. Right. Then it's this idea of like, well, what were they actually like? Because like you said, there is a difference in my mind, and maybe it's simply, we've talked about this in TikToks and in the in our podcasts and everything else. Our minds will paint pictures, and our minds will paint pictures of what we know, right? And so my mind has always seen Draguulin, and the werewolves of Sauron, and even Sauron himself when he transforms into a werewolf, as that werewolf Van Helsing, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Really
what I
good point.
see.
I
But
see
Karkaroff,
Underworld. I see Underworld
yeah,
actually.
and see that's great
Yeah.
too, right? But Karkaroff I see as the like Norse giant wolf.
Yes.
Fenrir.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's not the same. It's not this
Well,
hind leg
You point
walking.
that out,
wolf.
but you see there's these parallels because Tyr, the god of war, or the Aesir, wherever whatever the term is, puts his hand in Fenrir's mouth and says, "I promise if we chain you up that nothing will happen to you and you'll come to no harm, and if you do, you can eat my hand." Like Baron,
A little bit of Baron there.
Yep.
and Catamon, the one-handed,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting you mentioned that stuff because he was like definitely like the Ida influenced
Right.
him so much. But I find like, well, here's a good thing. It's like it's interesting because the lessons he took or like the points he took from that story, and then like obviously he just possibly could have just had it for like almost like an Easter egg in his own story that like
Right.
someone got their hand eaten off by a
Exactly.
wolf.
Well, and
Yes,
that's
exactly.
we're all a part of the same or similar minds when it comes to Tolkien and stuff. I feel like the hardest part, and Pete and Nick, you might say the same thing. The hardest part about talking about those types of things, those similarities that we all know and that we all see, is that they are also dog whistles. You know, for a bunch of white supremacist assholes.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
You know, saying that like, oh, see, you admitted that it is like this type of, it's like, yeah, but fuck you, not in the
that's
same
not
way.
Vikings
Yeah.
though. Vikings
Right.
were individuals. They could be farmers. They could be poor men who just like would opt to go and try to pillage something for wealth.
Viking is a verb.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Thank
So
you. Thank you. It is a verb. You're
To
right.
go Viking. Right.
Yes.
Right. Is so that's the act of what they do.
Yeah.
Right?
To go raiding, basically.
Yeah. To go raiding, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But cowards.
So,
They were absolutely cowards.
Yeah.
First point of like, pushback or like any form of like combat, they were out. They would book it.
It's like, nope,
We're
we're
done.
gone. Thanks, bye.
I can't bother with this anymore. This isn't worth my time and my life.
Right.
I don't know how to fight. I have a stick.
I do think it's like it's great though that we like that those similarities exist, and like what you were saying about the idea of like I'm thinking about all these monsters, right? And I'm going through trying to put this outline together and thinking about all of the different monsters that actually do create, you know, the world of Middle Earth, and so many things that we don't know, so many things in the darkness that we just don't know about. And really, the more and more I look into the monsters of Middle Earth, the more fucking terrifying Sauron is.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like, so many of these monsters come from his mind. So many of the terrifying things that happen, like not Morgoth, right? Like, yeah, like, yes, there are monsters that are created by Morgoth, but the things that Sauron does are twisted and scary and evil and just like, I mean, starting right out the gate with fucking Gorlim. Like one of the very first times we're introduced to Sauron. Like that is absolutely terrifying what he does there.
Imagine how good it would have been if the Silmarillion came out first, and like that's your first iteration of Sauron. You see like his growth into power. It's been so good, but like even then, it's like I think in that part of the story, and like I feel like pulling out, but he even laughs at that moment.
Yes.
He laughs like he's just so like it's not even maniacal. It's
it's the cruelty in what he did, right? It's just he is just cruel in that. He's
enjoying his game.
He is keeping his promise to him, right? He's like, I am going to keep my promise to you. It's just, it's not the way you think, right? Like she's dead, and you're
gonna be reunited. I promise.
I'm gonna send you to her.
And we see this sorcery, right? We see him being a sorcerer. We see him with this idea of necromancy. We see him being the leader of fucking werewolves and vampires. I'm sorry. What, like, this man is terrifying. Like he is and I've talked a lot about different Maiar and Valar and stuff like that, but like researching this podcast, I'm like, Sauron, like especially first and second age Sauron is fucking terrifying. Like first age Sauron
he transforms
is
into a werewolf and a vampire whenever he wants.
Yeah.
All right. He's just, and the way they describe him is he has iron claws and wingspan and like glowing red eyes or something, and then he flies over and like his blood spills out and burns the ground. It's like some wild thing like that. And like, yes, okay, he lost to Juan. Juan's the best. I love. He's a good boy. But,
he's the goodest boy.
But like
he
Sauron,
is the goodest of all boys.
He's literally a hound of Valinor. Like he's empowered by so much. Who knows if he's not like some form of a spirit or Maiar himself? And like, yeah, Sauron lost, but he escaped.
Right.
And like he consistently gets out of it.
Yeah.
And even like his need to control and find order in all things is almost more evil than Morgoth flat out wanting to just mar Arda.
Yeah.
So that actually brings me to something. And again, I don't even know if I really put it into, I kind of did put it in the outline, but it's something that came to my mind when I was researching a little bit more into the monsters. And actually I would like to know Nick's thoughts on this a little bit.
Sure.
But this idea of, so Sauron and the idea of order, right? This idea of him wanting, for better or worse, his, as Carlos calls him, his my way or the highway OCD that he has, right?
Literally, yes.
Yeah.
I feel like it is possible, maybe even probable, that a lot of these things, these like captured spirits, these tormented spirits, these demons that we might call them, are lost spirits of orcs or Avari, or whatever else that continue to wander because they don't have a place, and so he's finding an order for them, a terrifying fucking order for them.
Yes. So everything we've just been talking about for the last 20 minutes or whatever is like, it sounds like utter chaos, right? Like just evil incarnate with no direction to it. But no, Sauron is trying to guide them into something. You're absolutely right. So when we talk about it as twisting, it's the best he can do because there's no creation other than Iluvatar, right? So this is the best I can do, guys. I'm gonna force you into this form like a wolf or a
get in there.
Yeah, I know, get in there. Exactly. So no, I think that's a great suggestion, Chris, because what are they going to do? They are wandering spirits. And that's one of the potential explanations of the wargs and the werewolves, right? Is embodied Avari or embodied humans.
Well, because don't the elves, they have the choice to go to the halls, right? To be called to the halls, right?
It's a call, not a demand.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
So so I think
so the Feyya, they're Feyya.
Yeah.
It can choose whatever it wants, right?
Well, so even when it's not so much when they die, they could choose to just like kind of,
meander around
and meander around and just like wander. But the way that elves work, and you brought up the Feyya and the Hora, which is like their body form, because there's their body and their spirit forms. It's great because I actually wanted to talk about this today because I actually did a TikTok on the Nazgul as wraiths, and just a comparison to what like wraiths are in our horror stories that we deal with, even like older. I'm just talking more contemporary, where it's like it's just this idea that as they linger, like their body burns so hot and their spirit burns so hot. And a perfect example of that would be someone like Feanor in his first, like as he approaches and like what he is and what he did to Miriel and his battle with Gothmog and what have you, and his body turning to ash. But later on, like as elves dissipate, like and they leave and they tarry too long, their bodies almost like they could die. But their spirits won't, and their spirits become actual wraiths, and that's something I didn't get to talk about. But there are different forms of wraiths where there could be like these vengeful spirits, which are actual wraiths. There could be ring wraiths, which is what the literal translation in Black Speech or Sindarin would be, is ring wraith Nazgul. Will mean wraith. And then of course there's this idea that if you tarry too long, or even if you're a Maiar, which happens to Sauron and Saruman, even though he's blown away, is that you kind of just become this invisible thing that exists. And you just
Yeah,
kind of
spirit
float
of
along.
malice.
Like,
Exactly.
yeah. Not even a spirit of malice in a sense, like, because these elves don't have to be
Oh,
malicious.
I just meant specifically Sauron and
Oh, but yeah, in the
yes.
first stage, I don't know what was going on because at that time, I don't even know if it could have been Avari. That's so early on. Like, could they have been such like spirits wandering around, or like so many of them dead? At that point, I feel like they would have just taken them and, in that iteration being the Silmarillion, tortured them and made them thralls or whatever.
Yeah,
I often read the interpretation of the Avari as those were the ones that were too afraid of they bought in too much to the propaganda.
And let's talk about, I mean, this is something that Carlos and I, especially now that the Rings of Power are out, but something that I have really wanted to talk about with Carlos, and we've been talking about it forever, is the fate and destiny of orcs.
Yep.
Right. Let's talk about, like, if orcs do receive that call as well, how many of them are going to accept it? Right. And if they don't, then what happens to their spirit? Do they just linger in Middle Earth and then get to become twisted by Sauron or, whatever?
I don't know. That's a really good point. Me personally, if I had a comment on it, I would say they don't go to the Halls of Mandos because they don't even know what the Halls of Mandos are.
Right. But
and
it's like
they have no conceptualized idea that there's like the Valar who would be willing to accept them regardless of their actions, because they recognize them as children of Iluvatar.
Right.
They're probably been convinced by someone like Morgoth or Sauron that like the Valar are evil beings that seek out to end your lives, like to end your existence.
Right.
So they may just grip to whatever aspect of life they can and just kind of be those floating wraiths, and just not even bother to go anywhere. At least that's how I'd interpret that.
Yeah, I buy into that. And the issue is, as we get, as Morgoth is expelled into the void, and then as Sauron is defeated the fourth time.
That pesky Sauron. He's just
that pesky Sauron. So like, what are those spirits gonna do?
Right.
Like let's talk like post War of the Ring. What happens to the spirit of orcs? That's a sad, horrifying thought, honestly.
It is.
I hope they get summoned, like there's a capability of summoning people to the Hall of Mandos, being capable of doing that. And it's just like
that emo kid.
But if you've been lied to your whole time, right? And told like, these people, they're not, or, these Valar, they're not, don't have your best interest, right? Are you going to answer it, right?
Maybe you've just been following this guy around for like a millennia, and he just putzed around and lost his piece of jewelry, and then he gets destroyed and he's done, and you're like, what is this? And then you see this cool guy, he's like, hey, look, it's been a bad time, why don't you come over here, it'll be okay time. Who knows? And then it's a question also of like,
hey, we've got My Chemical Romance over here, guys.
Right, exactly.
It's gonna be
great. But there's also the question of how far the marring of Morgoth really goes.
Yes.
Is it just a physical form, or is it a spiritual form too?
Right.
Where like,
Morgoth's
the very
ring
essence of their spirit
is all about that, right?
Exactly.
Is the fact that like Arda is permanently scarred by Morgoth. It just,
but
what about
even further and say the Andulinde and the music of the Ainur that was purposeful, and this is fate for that to have even occurred from the start.
Right.
True.
But that's the problem, right? Is that's still the issue of, this is my fun headcanon into spooky season. Are you ready?
Hit me.
That's exactly what happened to the orcs that did not listen to the summons of Mandos. Is we still see them today in all of our ghost hauntings, in all of our ghouls and everything else. Like that is those spirits that stayed behind.
So I totally agree with that, because like, look at what Tolkien is doing. He's essentially providing us with a fan fiction, and yes, I just called Tolkien fan fiction.
But no, that's true. That's true.
Explanation of the hidden people. So like the Icelandic and Nordic concept of elves as hidden people, right? That's what happens to the good elves that tarried too long and their hurla, dissolve into nothing, and their Fae are left. The orcs are the malevolent version of that.
Right.
I totally buy that. Like your haunted house, that's fucking orc.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well,
I mean,
So
that's
I-
fucking
I brought
Shagrad.
that
right?
point up
Fucking
with like
Shagrad's just
Uruk.
in your house.
Shagrat, you get out of here. What was that dude's name I talked about earlier, Nick? Radbug? Get out of here, Radbug. I mean, Raybug to get rid of him. Like, sorry.
Getting your eyes squeezed out of you.
Oh man. But I made a video about vampires and discussed that where it's like, Tolkien used these aspects and created his own backstory and to like why these things exist. Because even
Exactly.
as one of his letters, he argues like, and when he wrote it in the 60s, he's like, technically we'd be in the seventh age of Middle Earth right now.
Right.
And
Which is the entire point of a mythology in the first place, right?
Yes.
You find
Explanation.
something that
Good
already
explanation.
exists and you give it an explanation.
And you just build on it. Yeah.
Egyptians thought a giant like dung beetle was pushing the sun through the sky, for example. Obviously it wasn't, but that's what they
Obviously, it's
thought.
who is it, Chris?
It's a tree like
Yeah.
that guy.
The
That
tree.
man, that guy was mad. He
Yeah.
he was so upset with. You're
Oh, that
telling me
guy, I
there's a
remember you
tree
arguing.
in the sky, dude.
Like there's not a tree, it's a fruit from a tree.
It's a
Thank
fruit.
you,
It's
all
a
right?
fruit
Like,
from a tree. Come on.
Being flown
He's
by
like,
a
well, you're
woman?
gonna-
Nope, that's where.
No, how
Are you gonna
dare
argue
you.
with that, or are you gonna believe some guy in a chariot's dragging it along the sky? Like, come on, man. There's not much
Please.
more to
Oh
work
my
with.
gosh.
So good.
So
Oh,
Um,
that was great. I love that.
No, I mean, and it is, and that brings us. I mean, we've been talking about Sauron for a while now, and kind of that hidden world. But like the fact that Tolkien did do that, and he did it well. Of this idea of giving us these unseen, this hidden world, and these things that have already existed. Pete, you talked about this a little bit, and this isn't necessarily the podcast to go into it, but anytime somebody says that Tolkien had a huge, like, that there was a Christian religious base in his writing, my thing that I always come back to is, and tell people this, and I feel like most of them don't understand it, is this idea that yes, but most of the things in the Christian mythology came from other mythologies
Thank you.
before
Right.
that.
Right.
Absolutely, 100%.
And so it's like we're just getting an explanation through another mythology of
Yes.
these things, and we don't really get much of an explanation of some of them, but they exist in his world so that we can then say later on that they exist in ours, right?
I think one of the coolest things that at least I try to do, and I don't like I've seen the movie's terrible, but like about Tolkien's life with Nicholas Holt, and
Right.
bless their souls for trying to make a
It was
movie
fine.
that
Yeah.
intertwined his
biopic.
books with his like actual life. But I try to put myself in the shoes of a man who would be Tolkien at the time of his like birth and to him growing up, and to think about the stories that really influenced him and his upbringing. Like he was pretty much raised in a very religious background.
Yeah.
But not only
Yes.
that, if you think about the stories that he was really reading about, like the stuff that he talks about that we already have established, like dragons, you'd think something like Saint Gregory, for example, or early iterations of the Hydra or serpents within like Greek mythos. Or another perfect example of that would be like orcs and goblins with the Fairy Queen story, and like going all the way
Yes.
back to like 10th century, which is like his main study at that time, Middle English. But it's like give you two sides. Like, yes, he tries to create these iterations and create his own religion, and almost a non-religion in Tolkien, because in
Yeah.
truth there's not temples. Temples are frowned upon. The only
Right.
times we ever hear about temples are the temples near like the Sea of Rune in the east, or like something like the Temple
In
of
Numenor.
Melkor
Yeah.
in Numenor, which
Yeah.
actually we were talking about earlier as well, because we giving her trivia all the time, every day. Like, get it in there, Pete. You better
All
do your
trivia
best.
all the time.
It's actually hilarious because like if you were to look through our like transcript, the chat, you'd be like, what the
Dude.
fuck are these kids talking about? Are they arguing about Sindar like versus Sindarin versus Quenya right now? It's ridiculous.
it's great. And of course, Callie's in the background, like taking notes, like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna stump him with this one."
Damn it, they already said it. Cross it out.
Yep.
But yeah,
good.
like religious aspects, he can't help but pour and intertwine them into his story. And also with the same mythos that he spent years and years studying. But to go one step further, he also has taken inspiration from it. And a perfect
Exactly.
example of that is the Barrow Wights are not mentioned in anything else but Tolkien's books, actually.
And they're fucking terrifying.
They're terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
Terrifying. I mean, there's like iterations, but like technically his idea of a white is like what a spirit is to most other like cultures, or like
Right.
almost like an undead zombie at times.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like and like I still just have from the very first time reading these books, I still have such a vivid fucking image of what my brain was painting inside of this
Yes.
like cave that they were in, as this hand, this fucking like undead spirit hand reaches out. It like terrifying. I mean,
Grabbing
like
for the sword
that's-
across their throats. I mean,
yes.
Jesus Christ. Holy
it's
crap.
that's
so good.
absolutely so frightening. But what's more frightening is when like Frodo gets lost. When
Yes.
Frodo loses the rest of them and the voice that he hears in the background. I'm like, I have the book right in front of me and I'm trying to find
Yes.
it.
The little song that it sings.
Yeah, where it's like, let me see.
It's what Gollum sings in the movies,
Yeah, cold,
right?
cold be heart and hand and bone. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cold
That
be
line.
sleep under stone. Never more to wake on stony bed. Never till the sun fails and the moon is dead. In the black when the stars shall die, and still on gold here let them lie, till the dark Lord lifts his hand over dead sea and withered land. It's very freaky and it's very
It's
frightening.
so
Very
good.
Poe-like.
It is.
Very
That's actually
Poe-like.
exactly what I was thinking, is how very Edgar Allan Poe that whole thing
that
is
poem
right
is.
there.
And that's like
Yes.
inside, but before that, he's like, he thinks he hears a muffled cry, and like he hears in the background, and like he hears this dread voice, and I think the way they describe the voice is like very frightening, like where it just like it cries out for him. It's like, where are you? Like this icy voice on the wind. It's like, where are
Yes.
you?
And that's
And he's-
and he says that, right? It's icy. Like
Yeah, he
icy
does.
pierces his heart type of thing. Like it,
Yeah,
and
like
it's
here he said a voice deep and cold that seemed to come out of the ground. I am waiting for you.
Yeah.
Fuck,
creepy.
that is horror.
Fucking terrifying.
Like that is
Fucking
horror
terrifying.
right there. Like
Yep.
that
Oh,
that's
completely.
what that is. And he does it so well. And like, I mean, that even that poem, and whether or not Tolkien intended this, I do like that he left it open for people. And like a part of me is thinking like, I hope he just somewhere is enjoying the shit that so many people say about his stuff, right?
Yes.
But like,
Absolutely. It has
but
to
like
be.
the idea of barrel whites being like these twisted zombie orcs who understand who the Lord of Darkness is, who understand like, because like that's in there, until the Lord of Darkness comes, like this whole
And it
thing
ties back into that idea of necromancy and him having
Right.
control over like spirits of sorts.
And it like it's
Crazy.
just like these and maybe even men, maybe malevolent men that turned and their spirits stayed because of that or something, and
Yeah.
like
So
Well, Dick, you know some background about the Barrow Downs and like what they used to be and what
Yeah,
occurred there.
It used to be part of.
it used to it used to be for Arnor, the kings of Arnor.
Cardalon.
Cardalon,
But then it
yeah.
was Cardalon. Yeah, even later.
And that's how I always viewed it, right? I always viewed it as the dead spirits of those, because wasn't it Cardalon that went to essentially to Sauron's side at the beginning?
Oh,
Like, they
it was
sided-
Rudar. Rudar, actually.
Rudar was the first to fall.
That's right.
Yeah, but they were the first like tempted by power and tried, because they were like battling regions, because I think his name was Arendor, was the last son, like main king of Arnor, and then those.
Could that be a trivia question?
Oh no! Oh my lord! Well, here we are again. But
exactly.
After that, his sons fought over the regions and what have you, and it kind of like had that major breakdown.
Yep.
But
which
the
which
weapons
is essentially
of...
just is European history. I mean, that's
it is.
But I'm pretty
Charlemagne.
sure exactly, and also that George R. R. Martin, obviously, the Game of Thrones too.
War of the Roses,
exactly. But I'm pretty sure the swords that they have are swords of Westernese, and that's why they're able to hurt, like for example, the Witch King.
The Witch King.
And so they're actually older than like Cardalon. They're older than that area, and so there's always been like a point of contention, I think, with how old the Barrow Downs actually are.
So there's some history of that's where the people who were related to the Adine who didn't keep going west, that's where they would bury people.
Right.
And then post fall of Beleriand, post fall of Numenor, the Dunedain come, right? And so that's where some kings of Arnor were, and then that ended up being where Cardolan was.
Yeah.
And so the bodies that the whites are inhabiting, this is my personal interpretation.
Yeah.
Those are obviously the bodies of fallen lords and just people of that place.
Maybe ladies too, because he
And
finds
ladies.
the golden
The brooch. Yeah, exactly.
Brooch, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're totally right. Totally right. It's people. Good point.
Right.
Good point. It's further terrifying because the origin of the word white is Old English. I assume it's pronounced the same, WIHT, which means living being or creature. It just meant person, right? Yeah. And then in Saxon, what became Anglo-Saxon was thing or demon. But like it originally just meant like there's a dude hanging out. There's a person, right?
This is my weed kidder, my friend.
which is so great because that's like the European. Because the word zombie, I'm wary of using the word zombie with this stuff because
I'm okay with it,
but it's derived from voodoo, and
right.
that's a whole other thing that is appropriated often too much. But
I like to look at it as this: there's Americanized horror, there's European horror, and then there's obviously cultural horror, or like at least terminology from it. We have a very Americanized horror that kind of bleeds a lot of different other older mythos. So like saying zombie is like, I mean, we have the Bayou, there's a huge culture down there for just
but
put it that way.
But to that point though, the fear that zombies elicit in us is what happens when your autonomy is completely removed from yourself, right? And so that's what's happening when your body is literally being used to do something else. That's to me where the real horror of the Barrow Wights comes from.
So would you say from what you're saying on there, you're saying like that this is closer to almost a demonic possession of an already dead vessel?
Well,
not even the vessel, the spirit. Like,
right, that's the question, right? Is it the spirit or is it the vessel? Because we know they didn't come back until the Witch King came back into power, right? Like him like literally coming by, he was like, oh yeah, do dark shit. I'm gonna go do dark shit over here.
I'll be over here doing dark shit.
Exactly.
I need to flank him. I need to flank him.
But then we get Mary having basically the vision or the dream of the Cardolan prince, right? Like remembering getting stabbed with a spear, was it? Oh my god. So like I don't know if
they remember, like they're laying there and they remember like whatever tomb they're on, they remember how the individual died.
Exactly.
Like they experienced it almost.
Interesting.
But then when they cut, like the description of the hands, like they cut the hand off and Frodo looks back and he could have sworn that he saw like a hand crawling
still
through the tomb,
fucking
like, still
disembodied.
But the way it's like wispy, they say it's wispy, almost like it's not flesh.
Exactly.
Spirit's hand like cut off.
So the real point of everything we've just been going off about is I love that we don't have an answer, and that's why it still makes me shiver, even though I know it so innately. Like it's still terrifying because we just don't know.
And
I just don't know.
And I think that's like, I think that was kind of the point of a lot of this podcast that I wanted to drive through is like we know the fandom, anybody who's listening to this podcast really knows orcs, they know trolls, they know dragons, right? They know these, which are scary monster creatures, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But these things that we've talked about are fucking nightmare fuel that that are just like not really talked about.
Balrogs, and like Balrogs are probably the scariest thing that most people know. But like for me, everyone always pictures Balrogs had like wings and scales and all this. Me, I picture like a demonic like spirit being with like
fire demon
engulfed in flames, and I'm like, this is far more frightening if I was in the middle of my home at like 3 a.m. and I turn the corner and there's some like dark figure standing there. I'd be like, I'd piss myself. I'd be like,
well, that's actually,
Christ,
I mean,
like,
that comes to like one of the things that like Carlos and I talked about our episode 8 wrap up is this idea that like I was actually hoping, and I feel like it would have been a really, really good story that the woman, the priest that had the shaved head, I was actually thinking that she was a Balrog.
Oh, that's good. That's
Oh,
good.
yeah.
I've heard that from a few sources,
Yeah.
and I'm with y'all. Like that would have been so cool.
I think that would have been awesome. Especially
I
with
just
how much
didn't want them to be
fire
what
she
like
was
what they
dealing
were.
with.
Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
I didn't like what they were because like
Right.
they like flung off their like physical forms and they're like these they're wraiths. They're like
Yeah,
that
wraiths.
was way too much
But-
of a Peter Jackson callback
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, it
but-
was too much. It was too much. And like, technically you wouldn't even be able to see these type of beings because they should only exist in this like spiritual
Unless
unseen
you're
world that
there
they came
too,
from.
right?
Exactly.
Right.
Unless you have
Unless
the
you're
ring
a
on.
spirit, unless
Unless you
you're a
got a
spirit
ring or
yourself.
something. Oh,
well,
maybe.
that's a good
Right?
point, Carlos. That's a good point.
And that's actually what the Rings of Power is about, being
Yeah.
dead.
It's really just the Sixth Sense in Middle
It
Earth.
is.
Yeah.
It is. 5 seasons of the Sixth Sense. There we go.
You find out Gandalf just sees dead people. It's
Yeah.
been a really bad
Sorry.
bad pipeweed dream.
Surprise!
for anyone who
All
hasn't
the
seen
episodes
the
have been
Sixth-
directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
I take it. I would take it. Okay,
Dude,
I screw
I'll
it.
take-
At least
I'll
we
take a
get some
cheesy
twists
twist.
and turns.
Yeah, exactly. An actual twist and turn versus
Yeah.
exactly
Swing away,
what we were
Aragorn.
told.
Swing away.
Dude, Signs is still one of my favorite movies.
Yo,
I
Signs
love
is a
that.
great movie.
Signs
I
is
love that
great.
movie.
Signs is
Someone,
great.
I saw someone make an argument that like they're demons, the aliens. And
Oh,
that's like all
really?
the lines like line up where it's like, she's an angel or like he has
Alright.
like, input from God or something. The
Right,
guy who,
because
like,
he's like
brother
he's
was
a
baseball.
priest or whatever he
Yeah.
was.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And like I'd rather have just freaky aliens.
No, I just love the
Same.
fact that it's aliens. It was fantastic. Like I
It's so
love.
good.
I've always kept
I love
water
that
by
movie.
my bed.
Yeah.
for that exact reason.
I take that. Demon alien.
And I tell you what, the village was not bad the first time
No.
you saw it.
If they got rid of Adrian Brody's character, like it probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
But Adrian Brody was just
The
kind of a problem.
the
in that.
only
It's just
M Night Shyamalan
weird
movie
time,
that I've ever like
2000s.
hated. The only M Night Shyamalan that I've hated is The Happening.
Oh, with Mark Wahlberg, is that who's in it? Right?
Yeah, because the
That's
most
the
unbelievable
trees, right?
the most unbelievable thing about that entire movie is the fact that Mark Wahlberg and Zoe Deschanel are a couple.
Sorry, I have to disagree with you. The worst one is the Avatar movie.
Oh, I don't even
Oh,
think
oh,
about that. I
oh,
don't
okay.
think that's.
we
that
don't
doesn't
talk
count.
about the Avatar movie.
It's like how
I'm
I don't
sorry.
think season 8 of Game of Thrones ever happened. It never
Yes.
happened. I'm
Yeah.
still waiting for
Yep.
it. Like just
Yep.
like M Night
Come on,
Shyamalan's
guys.
movie, it just never happened. Like whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
No production.
Oh, man.
Production hell. It
So
happens.
So can I bring it back to Tolkien for a second?
Yes.
Sure.
Do
because
it.
there's the other
No.
there's one piece of Tolkien's horror that we have not talked about at all, and that's the human side of it. And I don't mean men, I just mean like the more human, like this man saw the worst of humanity,
Mhm.
and he, better than pretty much anyone else, any other tortured First World War. I don't mean he went through torture in a
No, he
So
suffered
awful
from like he was
Mm.
sick and he
Yeah.
went through the whole like
he sure did.
aspects of being entrenched and like
and I totally agree with like Tom Shippey has talked about this ad nauseum and a bunch of other people. Garth, what's his first name? You know what I'm talking about.
That guy.
That guy have talked about how he, better than almost any other author of that era,
John Garth, right?
John Garth, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yep. Tolkien and the Great War is where I'm getting some of this from. Just he depicts that horror that we humans do to each other
Yep.
better than almost anyone else. And
Ulfang
yes,
is a
some
good
of
example of
that's-
that.
What's that?
Ulfang.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, and I know Sauron isn't a human, and I know, he's a demigod basically, but
I would say, what someone said it right to me the other day because there's archangels and angels. I look at him as like almost an angel, not even. an
Yeah,
archangel.
sure.
Like if you
Sure,
want to
sure,
be
sure.
keep it on the Christian front,
Yeah, exactly. I've always bought into that. We've got Iluvatar, which is God, and then we've got the archangels that are the Valar, and then the Maiar
Angels,
angels. Yeah, exactly. But what Sauron is able to do to individuals, like let's look at what happens to Gollum, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that, the horror, like
you have to recognize that the ring is Sauron, though. A lot of people argue this that
Exactly.
like it's just they think it like he has this like. See, this is the problem with a lot of different stories. Like, for example, I like Brandon Sanderson, but his magic systems have really gone out there and like really created these aspects that like people can just learn to wield this magic. While in Tolkien, you know, what was poured into that ring was not magic. It was the will and desire and innate like spirit of Sauron. The ring
it's
is
that
Sauron.
magia. Back to that point. Like it is him. Now, is it sentient? That's a different podcast.
We need a whole podcast on sentient image or sentient objects.
No, I don't think the ring's sentient per se. The ring can influence, but I don't think the ring can be like, "Hey, buddy, don't you want to go talk to Sauron real quick?"
Exactly. No, it's not saying Frodo.
But it kind of does, though. It kind of it does. Yeah, it kind of.
That's up to interpretation.
It calls to them. You know, it calls to somebody, right? So it's.
But it does more in the way that like
it's more like a drug, right?
It's more like
a drug. It's heroin.
Yeah.
I mean, Carlos and I talked about that in our Gollum episode. We talked about the fact that Gollum is an addict.
Yep.
Yes.
That is absolutely
Bilbo
what Gollum
is an addict.
Right?
Bilbo is an addict. And Frodo is an addict by the end of it. Like, he's completely.
That is why more than the shoulder stab, more than the Shelob sting, more than anything, that's why Frodo has to go west. Right?
Yeah.
So I just completely off topic, but I'm building a custom keyboard just for fun, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but I got this mystery box, and like, oh man, it's gonna be tough to see. I'll send a picture.
Put it right in front of your face.
There you go.
But you see that?
Oh my God! Look at that.
That's cool.
And it's like
epoxy.
It's the skull with the crown. Yeah. So I was thinking barrow whites almost.
That's sick.
Dude, it's so cool. And so I got.
Is that your delete key?
Yeah, it's absolutely gonna be my escape key. Get the hell out!
Escape!
But I got this keycap set because like I was thinking about getting the Lord of the Rings. You saw that keyboard for Lord of the Rings and stuff.
Yeah.
But you get the keycaps to not like create your more customized things. So I use my keyboard a lot. I have like program. I am a technical project manager. I play video games, all that good stuff. So I bought this mystery pack for like $60, and it was like $200 worth of stuff. And apparently, this is like a $60 keycap that someone made custom, like full artwork, like did a custom artwork and then poured like the actual resin for the key. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm keeping this. So I thought that was pretty cool.
My spooky
the one
key.
Spooky key. I love the one, but you could actually buy one that has like the ring in it.
Oh, really?
Oh,
that's cool.
That. It's really cool.
No, I think you're right though, Nick. Like, and it's something that I think, especially recently with some of our history episodes, Carlos and I have touched quite a bit about the violence and despair and fright that comes from war, and the ability that Tolkien has to put that into words in a different world, right? In a different scenario. But that doesn't, even just the idea of going all the way back to where we started with this, Baron not wanting to talk about what he went through, that is a shell-shocked PTSD person of war who does not want to trouble their loved ones of the shit that they saw and that they went through. Right?
That's right.
Because he wouldn't even tell Luthien.
Yeah, and like it's not even like it was like right at the beginning too, and like not even he wouldn't tell his kin, he didn't tell anyone, and like you think about the events that led up to him leaving Dorthonion or Taron Farwith. Farwith? Am I pronouncing it right?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Sometimes that's what I'm not great at.
Yeah,
I mess up pronunciation, but like what former Dorthonian, and like what happens is we touch base on a lot of it. The Gorlim story with like what happened to him, that was a companion of his father's in the 12. I think it was 12 or something like that rolled a bear here.
Yep.
And there's always those numbers 3, 7, 12, all over the place. But and everything he went through there, it's like he not only saw it from start to finish, he started it like experiencing. He started from start to where he like decided to leave. He saw the growth of everything and like literally in the midst of the whole thing, and he saw his homeland turn into this straight horror. It's just like a crazy concept because like it does parallel like what Europeans experienced when they were in their own countries and torn between war. A really good book that goes into that is All Quiet on the Western Front. Really describes that for Germany, what happens there. And like I always think about the guy in the shell hole, and like he kills the French guy or whatever, and like he goes through the whole experience of killing him. And it's like, who knows what Beren had to do to survive
Oh yeah.
Dun Gorthan, I'm sorry, Nan Gorthan,
Nan
Dun
Gortheb, yeah.
Gortheb. And it's like, you really have to ask yourself, like, are there other people in there? Probably not. But what did he have to kill to survive?
Right.
Did he stay up for hours at a time? Was it just like constant, like the need
and
to
whether or not
survive?
there were other humans or elves, were there other creatures that presented
Yeah.
themselves
Exactly.
as
Were
people
there
in his
specters
life?
that made
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Right?
Like Shelob's scary, but the spiders of Mirkwood in The Hobbit scared me more.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Before like Bilbo got his courage and started saying apricot and all that stuff.
Right.
Those
Oh my
spiders hate
God.
that. It got him. But
Yeah.
and the description of that, like of them being like wrapped in their webs and these creatures, and touch base again on something else we discussed, is like this aspect of these creatures having language that they communicate with each other.
Yeah.
It's like, what did this guy go through? Because he went through the first iteration of that.
That's
He
what
went
I'm
through the first
saying.
iterations of like what we consider these horrors later on. There was vampires and werewolves existing, as we know, because Beren and Luthien had to take on those forms to even pass through that area again.
Yep.
So it's like Beren is probably one of my favorite men of all time.
Yeah.
He's
Yes.
Well,
just
and
so
there
on
are
point.
things like you brought something up, and not to drag this on longer than we need to, but you brought something up with Beren of like more horror is that fucking dream that he had of
Oh, man.
his entire companionship getting picked apart by ravens, right? And by carrion birds. And I'm sorry, there's a huge part of me that and it failed, but I think that is a dream that again came from Sauron, came from the sorcerer, to
Yes.
scare him,
Wow,
to
that's a really
bring
good
him
point.
back, because he was the only one
I love
not
that.
there, right? He was the only one not around. Now that failed because as soon as Beren went there and he saw his hand of his father, he went fucking berserk and murdered every orc that he could and then
Yeah.
ran, right?
Yep.
But like that was, the terrors that he went through in a dream to then get that and then to run off into this hellscape, this fucking nightmare world.
Yep.
Fuck that poor guy, like
Exactly.
and amazing writing, amazing
Incredible.
horror writing by Tolkien, right? That just gives us these glimpses of terrifying, of the other world, of the unseen, of things that a man like Beren won't even speak of. Right? He gives us who Beren is, and then tells us like, but this guy,
This was
went
so
through all of
traumatic.
this, will not talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And it's just it's nuts. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. But it was this was just the fucking perfect. This is great. This was the perfect podcast at the perfect time with the perfect people. It was so good.
You ever want to talk horror? I'm like actually super down.
Yes,
Like if you want to
no,
just like, I don't even want to talk about my collection of Stephen King books because like it's expensive. But you know what story? And just to end things, story that always reminds me of like some of the horror aspects is a story called Jerusalem's Lot. It is a short story because Stephen King's short stories are probably his best stories.
Oh yeah.
Check that out. It's like got
Okay.
every type of aspect of like the fear, the mystery, the kind of like Eldritch horror that you could get from like other stuff like Lovecraft if you don't want to deal with that racist dumbass anymore.
Right.
Yes.
And like so forth. So like I do recommend that. And like certain aspects with that unknown that Beren goes through,
So good.
definitely certain aspects of that.
That's
Jerusalem's
actually
Lot.
so we'll go through and talk about our favorite ones of that really quick before we bounce
Okay.
out. Outside of Tolkien, short story also, and a problematic author who I don't really love most of his stuff. Short story wise, Orson Scott Card makes some fucked up horror, and it is good shit. It is really there's this very specific one called Freeway Games. If you ever have the chance, it's nuts. But I love it, and it's great horror. Anybody else have any non-Tolkien recommendations of horror?
I don't.
Movie wise, I'm a big.
Oh,
I
movie
love.
wise.
Yeah, I love the Babadook. That's one of my favorite.
Oh man,
Oh.
what a great one of the best horror movies to come out in the last like 5 years. But
Yes.
I have to say, like, if you were talking horror movies and you want to get a really good one that's not like an American Western movie, check out a movie called The Ritual. It is a Korean Japanese movie, I believe,
Yes.
about
You got me sold.
Yeah,
it
Carlos
is
likes those.
fantastic. Also, if you want to talk about just really good horror, Junji Ito.
Dude.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Uzumaki, or some of his other horror stories are awesome. Check it out. What's her name? Tomi. Crazy stuff. If you haven't had a chance to check
And
it out.
to flip what you were saying on their head about the author themselves, have you seen Lovecraft Country?
Lovecraft Country. I really
haven't.
enjoyed. Like, I read the book.
It's great.
And I enjoyed the season. I wish it was gonna because Jonathan Majors is just like
So good.
King the Conqueror coming up is gonna be so freaking good.
Yeah.
And he's in Creed 3. I'm like, you killing him, my man.
Insanely jacked. Just
Oh,
insanely
he's ripped.
jacked.
I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Man, what
Like,
are you gonna do, Creed?
insanely jacked.
But yeah, Lovecraft Country to play on itself, like they get into a lot of that stuff. But like, here's my thing: Lovecraft is a prolific horror writer, and it's one of those aspects where we're dealing with like to give it more of a contemporary like comparison, J.K. Rowling,
Right.
Yeah.
with everything that she
Good
made.
comparison. Yeah.
But the problem with Lovecraft is that you'll be reading the Call of Cthulhu, and all of a sudden he's going on a tangent about colored people and how they're stupid. And it's like, what is
Right.
going? And it's just like, and like the Mountain of Madness is one of his better stories, and they talk about like slave culture, and it's
Yeah.
another example of that. But like the best aspect, and that's why I like Stephen King so much, because he took that and like obviously throughout the worst of it was like the aspect of the unknown. And I think that's
Right.
really what this podcast has really jumped into, is like Tolkien's aspect of the unknown and his, as Nick loves saying, textual ruins.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, this has been great. It's been so much fun, guys, and talking horror and spooky season of Tolkien right now. It's just the perfect time for it. Everybody else, find us on @the _ Swolhirrim on Instagram and TikTok. Nick, do you want to give your socials?
Yeah, I'm at Fornost42 on TikTok and Twitter, and at HOULENIC 42 on Instagram.
And Pete?
I am, funny enough, at BE1Mont, which is actually, it's Belmont in reference to Castlevania games.
Right.
There you go.
I like that type of thing, but also the same on Instagram as well, at BE1Mont or BE1Mont11, I think it is, depending.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, find us on anywhere that podcasts are. Check us out on YouTube. This one's got to be on YouTube. Look at this. Like, come on.
I'm
definitely
not
gonna
have it.
We appreciate Carlos's hard work, damn it.
Exactly.
So check us out on YouTube as well. The Swolhirrim. Find our link tree on Instagram. That's where you're going to find any of our gear that Carlos and I are currently wearing. Our Swolhirrim shirts. We've got hoodies and a bunch of other stuff. And you'll also find our Patreon.
I want a hoodie.
I gotta get the black on
Door
black.
of Durin.
That black on black hoodie is nice. And also I don't have it on there. I'm still working on it. I say I'm working on it, but really my brain just doesn't work. But I'll get our Discord link so that you guys can be a part of this wonderful family that Callie has created as well. Where we've met such wonderful people.
Oh, wait, one last thing. Don't forget, if you hear this before this Sunday, October 23rd, we are doing trivia where we have the Lambengormo versus the Aratar to see who the best team is. And right now the defending champs are Nick and myself, so we're here to rep.
Yes.
That's right.
You can tell, we all got the knowledge, but we're here to show who really got the knowledge.
Yes.
Sweet.
All right, Chris, that means you have to post it.
I know. Now I've got to post this like today or tomorrow. Come on.
Hurry!
He'll still post it like the weekend after it's happened.
Yeah, right. or I'll just
but don't forget about
cut
trivia
that part out.
Don't forget about trivia that happened the week before.
Yeah.
Time machine.
It's been a wonderful podcast. Carlos, you have anything else for us?
Bye.